All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 171. Sorry it's been a few weeks here since I had a chance to record. I feel like I've had a very busy couple of weeks and, have put up a couple other random videos, but haven't had the chance to sit down and record a full podcast episode. So that is what we're doing today. And there has really been a lot that has been going on in sports, and that's not always super common for February. Like, obviously, February has the Super Bowl and the NBA trade deadline, but there's not always, crazy big news stories, at least in my personal sports world, like we've seen the last few weeks. So there is a lot to get into that I am super pumped to talk about. So I guess I want to start off with talking about when I was in New York. I think I mentioned on a previous episode I was going to be seeing LeBron play in Madison Square Garden, my first MSG experience. So I wanted to talk about that first. LeBron absolutely locked in, triple-double. Exactly what I would expect from him playing in MSG, because we know how much that arena means to him and how much he enjoys playing there. So that was definitely exciting to see. There were actually a ton of celebrities there. I was extremely high up in the arena, like about as far back as you could get. But there were a lot of celebrities they were putting on the Jumbotron, and they had Amy Schumer do the little Uptown Girl dance scene from Trainwreck, which is that movie that LeBron is actually in. So it was just kind of a funny connection there. To bring it back around to LeBron. Bronny got in the game. There were "We Want Bronny" chants. The crowd was pumped, hoping he was going to score. So that was really fun, and just overall good experience. I mean, it's a cool arena. There's nothing too crazy about it. It's more just the idea of being there feels exciting. But in terms of state-of-the-art arenas, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is best of the best. I mean, it doesn't have obviously the same history as a Madison Square Garden, but in terms of game watching experiences, we really have it good in Cleveland, and it's always a reminder of that when you see other places. So that was, overall happy I went. Very cool experience. And later that night, the news broke that felt like fake news, because it was just how could this possibly happen? Was the Luka trade. Luka being traded to the Lakers. Obviously there were a number of pieces involved in this trade. The main ones, though, being Luka going to the Lakers and Anthony Davis heading on over to Dallas. And the trade felt fake because there is just no scenario where I can understand trading a generational talent like Luka. He is top 3, top 5 players in the league. You don't come around guys like that very often. And so it just felt so insane that the Mavs would even consider doing that. They were literally in the NBA Finals last season. So it was just so hard for me to wrap my head around why it happened. I kind of right now am in full conspiracy mode with this, where a lot of people have talked about the Mavericks owners' connection to Vegas and, them wanting to do this to tank the season and be able to move the team to Vegas. And honestly, I'm not usually a big conspiracy person, but at this current moment, it nothing else makes sense for why they would do this. And not just why they would trade Luka, but why they would get such few assets in return for Luka. You should expect a haul if you're going to give up on a generational player like that. And it felt like they kind of just talked to the Lakers, didn't really put it out there with any other team to try to drive up the price overall of what they could get, and just were like, okay, yeah, this is a fine trade. We'll go with that. And that's where it feels so crazy to me, and where I go in kind of full conspiracy mode. They did ask, the Mavs owner, kind of about this thought that a lot of people are having. If he wants to move the team to Vegas, he is, unequivocally denying it, but Famous last words. I don't know. I'm having a hard time buying that. It feels very unrealistic. So I guess we'll see. Time will tell. But Luka has officially suited up with the Lakers, which is a wild thing to see. And Anthony Davis is injured, so that feels about right for how this trade was going to go. Other NBA news that I haven't gotten to talk about: Evan and Darius, our sweet, ethical basketball playing Cleveland Cavaliers, are both all-stars. So genuinely happy for them. So well deserved. They both have had incredible seasons. I think when you have a team like the Cavs where there isn't just one standout star, like obviously Donovan Mitchell is the main star on the team, but they really are a team that plays so well together and are also humble that, I think sometimes guys don't get the shine that they deserve. So I'm just so genuinely happy for both Evan and Darius that they're getting this honor. Now, the one thing that is a little bit of a bummer is that they won't get more rest time over the All-Star break, which I feel like our team desperately needs right now. So I'm sure that's a little bit of a bummer for them. But, Evan's first All-Star appearance, Darius's second, like I said, very well deserved. So that was like the first kind of big set of Cavs news over the last, 2 weeks. And then, NBA trade deadline comes up, and at the 11th hour, the Cavs make a move that a lot of us were anticipating. I think there were rumors behind it for a couple of days leading up to it. It seemed like the conversations were happening, but you just never know if those things are actually going to go through, if, the trade compensation matches up in those scenarios. But the Cavs did make a trade to get DeAndre Hunter. Really, I did a more in-depth video on this on the YouTube channel if you want to see my in-depth thoughts on it, but still want to get into some of that here. It feels like this is the first time the Cavs have had a 3-and-D wing, or just a big wing in general like this since LeBron. And this is something that they have been desperately needing. It's been a glaring hole for this team when they've played Boston, when they've played New York. It's been a struggle. I went to the Cavs Celtics game last week, and it just felt like they had such a size advantage over us, and it made things really tough. So I think even in that moment, it was really clear to me how important it was for us to be making this move. And look, I talked about this in that video too. It sucks when you get attached to players. Like, I really have grown to love Karras over the last few years. It was such an exciting day when we made the trade for him a couple of years ago. George has been fun and, lighthearted on, as kind of a veteran role player for this team. He does the post-game thing with Tristan, which was really fun. And it just sucks to have to make those decisions. But I think out of all of the role players that they could pick on this team, you can find good minutes for other people to replace these Karras and George minutes that you're not going to miss them so much. They also gave up 3 second-round picks, and then there were 2 pick swaps involved. So all in all, like, not a crazy haul to get a 6th man of the year candidate like DeAndre Hunter that fits a role that you are so desperately needing as a team. It just made sense from that perspective. For Atlanta, it was very much a cost-cutting move. And we just kind of got to be in a spot where they needed to do something, and we had something, or we wanted something from them, but, they weren't in a position to be super crazy with what they were asking for, and the Cavs were able to take advantage of that in that moment. So hats off again to Kobe Altman for being able to pull this off. He really should get more respect across the league for the way he has built this Cavs team. And this, just feels like another great move. To give just a little bit of background on kind of his career. and how he has been performing as of recent. He is a career 45% shooter from the field and about 37% from three. Has made some improvements on both of those metrics this season, shooting about 46% from the field and 39.3% from three. So really about 2 points higher from three, which is very impressive. Actually, really more like 2.5 points higher from three. So great to have a big 3-point shooter like that. I feel like that's going to be really lethal in the playoffs and something that they can benefit from. Defensively, I think he's been inconsistent over the years, but I've talked about this a number of times with this Cavs team and the amount of effort that these guys put in for each other because they love playing together so much, I think makes some guys better defensively than maybe they would be on other teams. And I feel like DeAndre Hunter is someone that will be able to raise his defensive game by playing with such talented guys and such passionate guys that are always diving all over the court for the ball and, putting their best effort in on the defensive end. I think it elevates everyone. So I think, we'll see some improvements for him on defense from how he was most recently doing in Atlanta. But look, we're in it. We're contending. And I think everyone knows it. And the Cavs are saying with this move that they know it. It's going to, take some time here to get these rotations working and figuring out what makes the most sense. But we do have that time. We have the luxury of a little bit of time to figure it out. So I'm personally excited. And just the longer it goes on now, that we have made this move, I am more and more excited about the choice to do it. Okay, let's switch over to some NFL thoughts. I just have 2 NFL topics I would like to cover today. Obviously, one being the Super Bowl. And let's start with that because we'll end on the big Cleveland story of the last few weeks. So Super Bowl, not what I expected. I really, even if I thought the Eagles had a chance of winning, I did not foresee the complete blowout that it was. The Chiefs offense was bad and Mahomes had no time. He looked scared. It is weird to watch Patrick Mahomes being in that position because it's just so not common for his career. And as many struggles as the Chiefs had this season, it never felt like they were going to completely fall apart in this way because he had just kind of thought, the Chiefs defense and having Patrick Mahomes, they were just going to figure it out, and they didn't. The Eagles defense completely dominated this Chiefs offense. I think my favorite play of the game was probably the Cooper DeJean pick 6 on his 22nd birthday, which is so insane that he is only 22 years old. Also, to just do that on your birthday had to be such a cool moment for him. So that was probably my favorite play of the game. I thought Jalen had a great game, won MVP. That was the only bet I hit of the entire game because I had quite a few Chiefs props and quite a few props that included some better Saquon yardage, but he had 25 attempts for 57 yards rushing. So he didn't have to do much, quite frankly, in order for them to win that game. So it wasn't really a problem. But, I think most people probably pictured him, in the end zone doing a little bit more during that game. So, yeah, this was not the way that I thought the Super Bowl was going to go. What I do find interesting, I think, is people saying that they feel like this loss for the Chiefs really tarnishes Patrick Mahomes' legacy. And I don't think I can totally get behind that. It was a bad loss, and I don't know if Tom Brady ever had, losses like this in the Super Bowl that were that bad. However, Patrick is only 29 years old, and I think it's silly to think that, he's not going to be back in this situation more. More likely than not, he is probably going to be returning to the Super Bowl at some point in time, if not multiple more points in time. Like I said, he's 29, so more time to do that for sure. So I don't think it decides anything about his legacy. I mean, Tom also lost Super Bowls, so we'll still have to let really the rest of his career play out. I'm not really jumping to any of those conclusions. I think that's easy to do in these moments, but I don't think that necessarily makes sense, in improving his overall career legacy. Okay, the last NFL topic for the day, because that's really all I had to say about the Super Bowl. I mean, it was a boring game, quite frankly. There just wasn't much to talk about. But in the NFL world, Myles Garrett has given us plenty to talk about. This also hit right around the time of the NBA trade deadline, so my brain was just mush for a little bit. What is going on in sports? What is happening? Myles Garrett has obviously requested a trade from the Browns. Look, this came as a shock to me, I think, because the last we had heard from Myles about, his thoughts on this season and his career in Cleveland, he had made some comments towards the end of the season being like, I want to be winning. I need to, make sure this front office is going to be putting us in a position to win, and that, we're all on the same page. Then we see him on Hard Knocks making some comments in the last episode, basically saying, we are a lot closer, we as in the Cleveland Browns, are a lot closer to winning than other people might think. Really being like, yeah, we have a plan. We got the pieces here. That was kind of the sentiment from him. It's hard to say now. I'm like, I don't know the behind the scenes of Hard Knocks, how that's recorded. Was this something that they were like, okay, Myles, say this line now? And Myles was like, okay, whatever. How much of it was coming from him? I'm a little bit curious now. We had the comments from Andrew Berry maybe a week before or 2 weeks before saying we expect Myles to go from Cleveland to Canton, basically saying we expect him to be retiring as a Cleveland Brown. And then, not that long later, we have Myles requesting a trade. So I think it was a little bit shocking to see that, because that was just not the message we were getting from the front office or from Myles himself through Hard Knocks. It's interesting to see the reaction of Browns fans. I would say 90% of Browns fans are like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Which is a crazy thing, and shows you the state and the mindset of Cleveland Browns fans at this point in time, and how much our team has beaten us down and how disappointing this season was, that your generational talent, Hall of Fame pass rusher that you drafted and developed in your city requests a trade to leave in, 9.9 times out of 10. Fan bases would be like burning jerseys, freaking out, so upset over the thought of this. And Browns fans are like, yeah, I get it. And that just really shows you how bad things are right now. And look, I am also in the camp of I get it. I want to be traded from the Browns sometimes. I'm like, put me out of my misery. This is it's a hard life to be a part of this fandom and this team. And I can't imagine how frustrating it was to be a player over the last few years with the Deshaun Watson trade and just how horribly everything has gone. Now, at the same time, Myles has kind of condemned fans for booing or, those or cheering for the Watson injury and those kind of things. So it is a little bit ironic in that sense. I understand obviously why he did that in that moment, and that, maybe it's not connected to how he's feeling right now, but it's like, okay, so you did understand why we were feeling so upset, because you are also feeling very upset by the state of the Cleveland Browns. So it's been interesting to watch. Obviously, Myles, has been doing the rounds. He was doing the rounds on Radio Row. He has been in the media talking about what teams he'd like to be on. He's like, yeah, it'd be cool to play for the Commanders, and Jane Daniels is a great quarterback, and just, talking away to everyone who will listen about where he thinks would be interesting to play. So he's really putting the pressure on the Browns for sure. He's mentioned that he talked to LeBron, which is just a dagger in the heart to throw that in there. Obviously, we know he is talking to LeBron in Clutch because he works with Clutch. But just to throw that in there is like, oh, okay, thank you so much for that reminder. That one was a little bit hard to hear and felt a little bit intentional. What's weird about all of this is for this current season, it makes zero financial sense for the Cleveland Browns to trade Myles Garrett. They are already in such a bad position with the cap because of their contract with Deshaun Watson. With Myles' contract specifically, they have done the classic Andrew Berry restructures every year where you push the money down the road so that the current cap hit is less and you're kind of planning for the future so that when you sign Myles to an extension, you're kind of just reworking all of that, continuing to push money down the road, assuming that the cap overall is going to increase. So first of all, this throws a big wrench in those plans when the player that you keep pushing the money down the road for wants out. But it makes literally no sense for them to be able to move on from him this season. There's ways they can do it in the future, but it's still not going to be ideal for them at all. And I think Myles knows that, like he wouldn't go into this not knowing that. So it is interesting for the way he is putting this pressure on, knowing probably how hard it would be for the Browns to actually move him somewhere else. I know contract disputes happen all the time in professional sports. This is not the first time it's happened. Just a few years ago, the Lamar Jackson contract dispute was probably one of the biggest stories in all of sports. Lamar wanted a fully guaranteed deal, similar to the Deshaun Watson deal, and things were really contentious with the Ravens. Like, I remember feeling in that moment when all of that was going on, like, there's no turning back from this. Like, it felt like, I don't know how he's going to be able to be a part of this Ravens organization going forward in the future. They were really calling him a child. Like there were crazy things being said. And now it's crazy because Lamar he won MVP last year. Was this close to winning MVP again this season. And no one talks about that anymore. Like, it is not a thought in my head at all that, that Lamar had, this dispute with that team. Because I think things move so quickly in the NFL, from week to week, even this past season when everything happened with Deshaun and the injury, and then the next week the Browns beat the Ravens and everyone is on cloud nine. Like, things and feelings change so quickly. That's the one piece that gives me hope that there is potential for reconciliation, that if the team does start winning this coming season, that Myles potentially could want to stick around. And I think the fans would have a short memory, the organization would have a short memory, Myles could have a short memory, and they could all move forward. The only thing that makes me a little bit more nervous is that this isn't about money, whereas most contract disputes do come down to money. This is truly about Myles and what he wants for his career, what he wants his legacy to be, how much he cares about winning. So it's a little bit different than past situations we've seen in this league and in professional sports in general that makes me really unsure of what the result of all of this is going to be. But, in a perfect world, like I want Myles to retire in Cleveland. I understand why he would want to go somewhere else and, have a shot at winning. The only thing I will say against moving to another team, even if you're not perfectly happy with your situation, is that the grass is not always greener on the other side. First of all, it's really hard to win a Super Bowl. Unless you go to the Kansas City Chiefs, you're not really guaranteed anything. And the Chiefs aren't guaranteed of anything, but year after year, they're the team that's making it. So he could go to a contender like the Bills and never make a Super Bowl. And that's obviously what his goal is. So it's certainly not a guarantee that you go somewhere that, has a talented quarterback and a good roster and that you're going to even go to a conference championship. Like this, that's just not how it works. And that's a big decision to make for your legacy. I was talking about this on one of the OBR shows last week with Brad and Quincy, and Quincy brought up the point of legacies are ruined a lot of times when players move to different cities. And Kevin Durant is a perfect example of that. No one looks at his championships as his own. People look at it as Kevin Durant got a ring with the Warriors because he, was just kind of trying to win and didn't stand by the organization that he was a part of before. And I don't think people look at him the same because of that. That ring is Steph and Draymond and Klay's ring. It's not Kevin Durant's ring. So it's really interesting to think of it from that perspective. You look at LeBron's career. His Cleveland ring meant so much more than all of his other rings because he won that one in the city of the team that drafted him and, developed him. Obviously, he did, a lot of the development himself, but still, it just means more when it's the place that you are from or, were drafted into. The players care a lot more about that. So if legacy is Myles' concern, I don't think going to another team is necessarily going to help his legacy in the way that maybe he thinks it will. Grass is it's really not always greener on the other side. There is something to say for sticking to the organization that you were drafted in and has been there for you. I mean, look, to the Browns' credit, they have been there for Myles through a lot of turbulent times. There were the years where everything was going on with the Mason Rudolph incident, which of course I'm 100% on Myles' side and all of that, but the organization really stood by him and all of that. He had that accident a couple of years ago that he was getting a lot of criticism for, which was a little I'm sure rough for him to deal with because he was speeding in that incident, and the team stood by him and was there for him. So I do think there is something to say for having a relationship between a player and a team that is really special. I mean, I look at someone like Jason Kelce and his career in Philadelphia and how connected he became to the people there and, how much he means to that city, especially when you're not a quarterback. I feel like obviously it's easy for a quarterback to connect to a city in most circumstances because they are the face of the franchise in many ways. But for someone like Jason Kelce, who is a center, to be so connected to the city, I think is really special. And you don't see that all the time. And there are just certain things that mean more. And look, we know the Browns will pay Myles whatever he wants. That's as many criticisms I have of that organization. They will pay their players. They will pay Myles whatever he wants. So this is obviously a lot deeper than that. And I really hope that they can work it all out. I guess we'll have to keep an eye on whatever rumors happen over the coming weeks and months because it feels so unlikely that there is anything that they're going to do. But yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks. There's been a lot going on, but I'm glad I was finally able to hop back on here and discuss all of it. I will hopefully be doing another live watch for Cavs Raptors this week on Wednesday. So if you're watching this before then, definitely check that out on the YouTube. We'll have some fun chatting about the game. I wasn't able to watch DeAndre Hunter's first game because of work stuff. So I am looking forward to getting to see him play and watching the boys out there as we get closer to the All-Star break. Football season's over, which is unfortunate, but we will, start thinking about the draft coming up here, which is really crazy. Probably about 2 to 3 months away from the draft now, but we'll get close to the combine and, start thinking about what the Browns are going to do. So lots to come in the coming weeks and months. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, please subscribe on the YouTube if you're not subscribed there already. Leave a comment of kind of your thoughts on any of the insane topics discussed today, especially the Myles stuff. I want to hear how people are feeling on everything with Myles and where everyone sees this going. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, please follow, subscribe, leave a rating, review, all that good stuff. Share with a friend. Very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, go Browns.